Welcome, everyone. We're going to give everybody just another minute to keep filing in, and then we will get started. Well, welcome, everyone, to today's NAMI at noon. I'm Amy Brundle. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager for NAMI North Carolina, and we are pleased to have everyone here today for this webinar. First of all, as always, we'd like to thank the North Carolina Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Use Services for their support of today's webinar and the other education programs that we run here at NAMI. Couple of housekeeping items. We'll take questions at a couple of different times through the presentation. So if you'd like to leave them, you can use either the chat function or you can use the Q&A function down below, and we will be happy to answer those questions. We will also be sending out any materials that Dr. Renee provides to us later on, probably early next week, as well as the recording and a feedback sheet. So we would love your feedback on today's session. And now I'm going to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Renee Manet is the Executive Director and co-founder of Renewed Strength Counseling Services. She's based in North Carolina, but serves clients across the globe, and her practice is dedicated to building capacity within African American private practices, training future clinicians, and making mental health services accessible to underserved communities. She has a doctorate in health sciences from Campbell University and is certified in perinatal health, couples therapy, and parental leave coaching. She's also a trusted guide for working women, helping them achieve life-work balance by tackling challenges like perinatal mental health, relationship issues, and workplace stress while promoting psychological safety. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Welcome, Dr. Renee.
Thank you, Amy. So glad to be here. As she said, I'm a clinician at heart. I'm a social worker at heart and a health educator. And so a lot of the work that I do surrounds a lot of those different topics. So I'm so happy to be here at NAMI at noon.
Hmm. And we're talking about something that I think is going to hit a lot of us, especially professional women, around this time of year when our normal busy routines get even busier with trying to manage the holidays for our families. So let's just jump right in. Um, as I was promoting this event, I used the phrase Superwoman syndrome to describe the phenomenon we're going to talk about today, but that might not be familiar to everyone. So, as I share my screen, would you tell us a little bit more about what this phrase means?
Absolutely. So the Superwoman syndrome, it can also be, I think the first terminology was Superwoman schema, where they talked about a condition where a woman tries to do everything. And in efforts that she's putting forth, it ends up neglecting herself. And so there's this obligation to project strength and prioritize caregiving over their self. And then despite them having challenges along the way, they'll still pursue all of these different things. And so, Superwoman syndrome will present itself in a lot of different ways for women, and they don't even know that it's happening to them. Or let's say the professionals that are working with them are not even, they're not understanding what's going on. And so, it was first developed by Dr. Leaf Mullings back in around the 70s and the 80s. And as she did more research, Dr. Cheryl Woods Giscombe, who's actually based here in North Carolina, has done even more research to have some different scales and assessments that kind of help us uh, figure out what's going on.
So this syndrome sounds like it's a response to, either internal or external pressures. Can you talk to us a little bit more about maybe some of the societal expectations or pressures that women who are experiencing this syndrome are experiencing, are they're responding to?
Absolutely. If we can look at that second slide, I'll go over kind of the five elements of the syndrome. And so these are what we call perceived obligations. And so a woman that may be suffering from this particular syndrome, or let's say technically they're suffering, but they don't know they're suffering. They're actually excelling more than likely at a lot of different things. They're going to have a perceived obligation to project strength, and that any weakness or frailty is not regarded well. They're going to suppress emotions. They're going to resist any feelings of vulnerability or dependence. And so this means that they feel that they should be independent, they should be strong, that people should be able to depend on them, but they do not have a space to depend on others. Another thing that comes up is they have this perception that they must succeed despite limited resources. And that has a lot of different things to go on with what society brings up. So a woman that is given, let's say, less resources in the workplace is expected to produce the same as somebody else that would get all of the resources that they're supposed to have. And then lastly, they may prioritize caregiving over their own self-care. And so all of these things are the societal expectations of um, the woman should nurture, the woman should be able to figure things out. A woman should be able to deal with all of the problems that go on and not need a lot of time to recover. And I think it even goes down to expecting a woman to have basic leave from work after for maternity leave. And most of the maternity leaves, from the doctor's perspective, only give them 4 to 8 weeks, depending on what procedure they have or how they give birth. And technically, women are taking almost 2 years to really recover from a pregnancy and giving birth. And so the society expects us to just keep going, figure it out, continue to do all these things. And women are actually taking on these same societal expectations. And this is where that superwoman syndrome comes into play. So yes, I can do all of these things with less resources and not having to depend on anybody and not needing a break.
Do you think that some of this, like responding to these societal expectations, kind of begins when many of us are children? Do you think it starts that early?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. In the psychological world, we look at a lot of things that happen as a child for people, and when we see them present as an adult, a lot of the same things that they witnessed, a lot of the same things that they were enduring are still concerns to this day as an adult. And so, if they have different role models of women who have this superwoman capacity, they're wearing this cape and they're able to do so many things. It is also expected that women now should be able to do all those things that women in the 50s or the 60s were able to do and do it well.
Mhm.
But we are not the same women of the 60s. We're not the same women of the 40s. We don't have the same challenges they had, but we also have newer challenges. There's a lot of technology and features that we're also obligated or expected to keep up with. But if we've been seeing those same role models, those same super women that have been able to do so many things, we're also going to have that same mindset that we should also be able to do all of these things as well and do it well and not
Mhm.
depend on others to do it for us.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us watched our grandparents and our grandmothers and our mothers, take on so many of these roles and not question it, and that's the pattern that we're following.
Absolutely. And that pattern, it's innate in us. We are going to follow what we see.
Hmm.
Children follow what they are taught. They follow what they actually see. So even if a person doesn't teach them, they're going to learn those same behaviors and traits some way down the line and see that it's possibly good or possibly bad, and then they make a decision on how to use that. But innately in us and subconsciously in us, we see these elements of strength, and we may glorify them and say that they're great, and we take them on. And so, if our mothers were expected to also work a 9 to 5, which also kind of went down to a 9 to 7, depending on what the obligations were at work, right? But then she's still expected to clean the house, have food on the table, take care of all the kids, help them with homework, wash the dishes, wash clothes, all of the things of the household, and then it can be a lot and overwhelming for a lot of women, and we're all made up very differently. We all have certain skills and strengths and aptitudes. We also have certain resiliency that we learn over time, and we're not all made up to do the same things.
Mhm.
We just are not. And women have like a crisis sometimes of their own uh, fallibility and see that I'm not able to do all these things. So am I still a woman? Am I still a good mother? Am I a good wife if I can't follow through with all these societal expectations of me? And these
Mhm.
are the expectations that I also have of myself. So now I'm having a crisis of identity.
Yeah. Um, so, we've kind of talked about some of the ideas that we take on as children, watching our mothers, our grandmothers go through this. And what are some of the things that we may have to, some of the inherited ideas about ourselves, our identities, our roles as women that we may have to unlearn when we're trying to, recover from Superwoman syndrome?
Good question. Um, I think there are quite a few, and one of the concepts that's really going around now a lot is the power of no, and that no is a complete sentence, and it's okay to say no.
Mhm.
Um, it the no, I love how a friend of mine actually says the no is actually saying yes to myself. But in if a person is suffering with Superwoman syndrome, they think that them saying yes to themselves is a selfish act,
Mm.
and it's really not. But being able to say no and mean it, say no and be okay with the no, that means that somebody else has to step up, somebody else has to step in. We've got to be able to figure out that saying no is saying yes to ourselves, and prioritizing ourselves actually does help us, but it also helps the collective. So if we are okay, and let's say we're one of the main leaders in our organization, but we take care of ourselves, we prioritize ourselves, we are able to say no, we can delegate, then that means I can show up authentically, I can show up strong, I can show up refreshed and able to do the work. But if I am over obligated into so many things, it is going to be very hard for me to show up well. And so that's where we get into a lot of women that may have major stress, and they're struggling with their eyesight somehow or another. Now their blood pressure is up. They don't understand what's going on with their digestive system, but they haven't been able to let go of anything because they're doing so much.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
those are
I know one that I've heard frequently is that, your worth is not based on your productivity.
mm,
And
I like.
that's, yeah. So how does this syndrome, um, how does this syndrome manifest in, it's kind of a universal, it can be a universal experience with a lot of women,
Yeah.
but it manifests in a specific way for women of color. Can you expound on that just a bit?
Yes. So as a woman of color, I definitely feel the brunt of this. In society, a lot of women of color may not get a lot of leadership roles, but they're asked to do a lot of leadership tasks or roles and responsibilities. But it doesn't come with the pay. It may not come with the recognition. And so that can be quite challenging, but they're still expected to produce something, as you shared. Um, they're often overlooked for these different roles, but the responsibilities are still there. Let's just throw, this over to Renee. She can handle it. Well, Renee likes the challenge, right? Renee does not want to show weakness. And Renee wants to show that she's smart because she wants to eventually get promoted, right? And so if that's the case, then I continue to do and continue to produce, even though I have less and I'm behind, but I'm going to still keep trying because we want to try to, make whatever the mark we need to make at the space that we're in.
Mhm.
But as women of color, there usually are less opportunities, and there are less resources, and it causes more strain. But in communities of color, we've already had those struggles. So it's like, you're supposed to struggle. It's okay. It's not supposed to be easy. You're supposed to continue to do these things. That's the kind of mindset that a lot of people have. The other mindset is I was able to do it, so you should be able to do it.
Mm,
A bigger mindset and concept that I think we're always trying to navigate is this perception of being responsible for everybody. And that's different
mm,
in a lot of different communities of color, but the same thing permeates is that we are all in this together, which is such a good collective mindset that we work together, we affect each other, and that we should care about each other, right? That's a beautiful mindset. I think it's great. However, does it translate to I forget who I am and what I need, and I do everything else for my family,
mhm,
or my cousins down the street, or my extended family, or just the community at large? And I think we have to figure out where those boundaries are to really make it work for everybody. There's nothing wrong with that concept. It actually, is based in Christianity and some other basic religions that we are all interconnected and that we should connect and help each other out, but to what end?
mm,
And it shouldn't be that I sacrifice all that I have to the greater good and give of myself. It's almost like a martyrdom that some women of color will have, and that they expect the family, the society, the culture expects them to, it's going to be hard. So therefore you do everything and you give everything that you have to our collective mindset, to our collective need. Um, and in essence, I also say, well, what about splitting up some of those responsibilities? Or what about not sharing and giving your all, but giving 15 or 20%?
mhm,
Because you need to split it up around everywhere. So home gets certain percentage, work gets certain percentage, you get certain percentage, maybe the community things that you do get a certain percentage. But if I give my all just to my family, then if I'm part of the income of the household, I don't have anything to give at work, and so we have to be able to balance that out. But that type of mindset, like I said, it's a beautiful thing that we're such an interconnected community, but it can pull people down and keep people
mhm.
stuck in this mindset that I have to be able to do everything with no resources, or I have to figure it all out and forget about what I need and do whatever else everybody else needs. And that can't be sustainable long term.
Yeah. So, I mean, the concepts of like, self-sacrifice to the point of pain and um you mentioned the word martyrdom. I think that's a huge way of putting this. If somebody's internalized these concepts and they're using those as like driving forces behind how they conduct their day and their life, what do you think does that do to a woman's mental health over time?
So a lot of women that are suffering with this don't even know that it's happening, but
Hmm.
they're struggling in some ways or another. And it might come out in like anxiety or depression, but even in the work that we do, we find that women don't even know that they're depressed or suffering from anxiety, but their hair's falling out. They
Mm.
can't eat. Every time they eat, there's some type of digestive issue, so they can only eat a few different things. And so they've gone to the doctor, and the doctor's like, "There's nothing wrong with your stomach.
Right.
Everything works perfectly. Have you been stressed?" And they're like, "No." But their hair's falling out. I
Hmm.
think just being aware of it sometimes is such a hard concept that people are not seeing.
Hmm.
And we miss it even as clinicians in the mental health field. We miss that some people they don't show up on the scales that we do. We do a scale that measures for depression, we do a scale that measures for anxiety. But I love with this particular syndrome, there's actually some scales now that they have where they're actually asking about some of these perceived obligations. So it asks whether or not they can recognize anger, disappointment, or sadness. And a lot of people will say, yeah, I know what those are. Do you recognize them in yourself? What do
Hmm.
you do when you are disappointed? Well, I try not to be. Or I can't identify when I'm disappointed or not. And so we use, I have one here. Let me see. It's a feelings wheel. Can you see that?
Hmm.
And when I show people this, they're like, there are that many feelings around. They absolutely love it. And I'm like, absolutely. So it's not just anger, but under anger, there's disappointment and frustration. Let's pair that in. Let's figure out what that is. And some people just have a difficulty really accessing what those emotions are and then kind of, okay, I know what they are, and now I know what I normally do, and what I normally do is suppress it, or what I normally do is yell at the kids, or what I normally do is eat. And now I'm gaining weight, and I don't know why I'm gaining weight. Well, now we figured out you're eating too much when you're so upset. So let's figure out how do we change that behavior? How do we backtrack and figure out how do we manage the emotion of disappointment versus doing the same thing that you've been doing. And so
Hmm.
I think, looking at that, we really have to pare down each of those perceptions of those obligations and really dismantle that. And when we start doing that, it really opens up the world for some women where they say, oh, I don't have to do things the same way I've been doing it. And it's okay that I change it up. Yes, absolutely.
We got a comment from a participant saying that she was in ordained ministry, which as a woman is difficult enough. Let me tell you. One evening, I missed the family meal talking with a parishioner in the driveway. When I went in, my two-year-old daughter had climbed up on the table and fixed my plate for me. Yes, it starts when we're young.
Mm,
Already, her daughter had been trained that, it. I am the next hostess. I am now responsible for taking care of other people
yeah,
who
I
are
can
missing
meet
out.
the need, right?
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that as far as like I want to support, I want to host, I want to step in and meet the need. But if it's going to be to the point of sacrifice or self-sabotage, then it doesn't serve anybody.
Hmm.
Um, when we talk to women in about self-care, a lot of them get confused and they don't understand what that really means. And it is some of the things where we get our nails done or get our hair done. It can be those things, right? It can also be walking. It can be taking in a new movie or a play or a show. It could be going to the church and volunteering if that's something that does your heart good and it warms you, right? But in the end, the big concept of self-care is how do you start with yourself? How do you prioritize yourself in the midst of all the chaos?
Mm.
That's what it really is. It's not so much those different things. It is how do I make sure that I do something for me that helps fuel who I am in the midst of everything because it matters. And so hopefully that 2-year-old didn't lose out on playtime or anything like that to serve her mom. But serving her mom is good, but she
Hmm.
can't neglect herself, right? And I'm
Right.
pretty sure a 2-year-old, they definitely are self-absorbed, which is great. And I think it's amazing that the 2-year-old fixed the plate because they sometimes don't even have a concept of that somebody else needs anything.
Hmm.
So that was beautiful, for sure.
So it kind of sounds like there's a really fine line to walk when we try to start looking for balance between, still having open hearts and being giving, but also learning how to give to ourselves as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, very fine line.
Um, so what are some positive things that women can do? Like, say they've become aware of this situation, they want to turn things around, they want to start finding a better sense of balance in their lives. What are some ways that they can begin removing some unnecessary pressure, perfectionism, this kind of self-sacrifice, these ideals? How can they start kind of undoing some of that?
I'm glad you brought up the word perfectionism. That comes up in a lot of different ways, and it is very evident in this syndrome. And so, if they're recognizing that this may be of a concern to them, they've got to let go of the perfectionist mindset. And it's not that everything needs to be perfect, but it may be that I am the only one that can do this, or my way is the best way.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember a really good lesson I learned about how to fold towels. Very strange, but we were trying to sell our house, and we had a good friend come in, and she helped us stage the home, and she showed me how to fold the towels so they kind of look like they're at the hotel, which I thought this is amazing. I love it. So I started folding towels that way, and we, made the house look nice, whatever, sold well. So as we got into the new house, I'm trying to show my husband, hey, this is how we should fold the towels. It looks amazing. It looks amazing. And he was like, as long as they get folded and get put away, I think it's all right. I could have internalized that these towels are the best way, this one particular way,
Mm-hmm.
and stood on my heel about it, right? and stress myself out to the point that all the laundry gets done, but I have to always fold the towels or I always have to put the clothes away a certain way. And mind you, if these are certain things that are really innate to me and I just take pride and joy in it and it helps me out, great. But if it's something that is arduous to me, takes up too much time, causes arguments, then why am I standing on this hill about towels, right?
Hmm.
So it's sometimes that perfectionist mindset that we have, we've got to let some of that go. The towels got put away, didn't they? They got put away and they still can be used, whether they're folded right or not. They still can be used. And we have to be able to be okay with those concepts. But I find like I'm trying to dismantle a lot of that with people when we're working and doing some of the mental health work. And so I think when people can tap into mental health, they can tap into their ministry partners and ministry leaders to really help them see this, it can open up so many doors for them.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm glad you put this slide up too. So these are some other things that I was putting together. We've got to know some boundaries for ourselves. We have to know what our no's are and why we have a no and like hard lines. So if my hard stop is at 6 p.m., I hold that line. I don't do things after 6:05. Maybe I prep everybody around me to say, I will be leaving at 6 o'clock. Anything that needs to be done needs to be told to me by 5:45, otherwise we're not doing it. But setting those boundaries and holding the line, and it's not okay for everybody to just slip over the boundary line every so often. Well, this is a crisis. This is a crisis. Is it really? Do we really need to work through this at this particular time? There's some things that can wait till the next day. Now, I'm not talking about mental health crisis. That's a whole nother concept, and we take care of those in real time, right? But we're talking about, I didn't get this deadline done, so I need you to help me on this project. If your hard stop is at 6, let it be 6. Sharing responsibility. This is a huge one where women a lot of times may feel like all the responsibilities or burdens are on them. And when they maybe ask their children to participate or their spouses to also participate in certain concepts, that they still pull them back because, like I said before, they want the towels a certain way. Or it gets done faster when they do it. Well, of course it does. You've been doing it for a long time. But if you really want to have some more freed up time to let your mind reset and renew for the next day, then you're going to share some of those responsibilities with your partner and your children. Children, even the 2-year-old, if she knew how to fix a plate, that means she knows how to put things away. She understands
Hmm.
different concepts, so she can be integrated into different roles and responsibilities around the house. And so can the 2-year-old little boy, right? Not just women, right?
Hmm.
Um, I also tell people, and this is a huge tactic, especially in the faith world, they can respond slower to things.
Hmm.
So yes, if people are asking you for something, you don't have to have an answer right then. Let me get back to you. And in the faith world, I tell people, put it on God. Tell him you need to go pray about it.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna wait for an answer. I love that part. One of my pastors told me that one time. He said, tell them you're waiting on an answer. I said, oh, that's good.
Hmm.
Because if you say you're gonna go pray about it, they're gonna like, okay, did you pray about it? Did you pray about it? Well, if you say I'm waiting on an answer, they know our time is not God's time. So they're not gonna keep badgering about it. And if they do, then they know they're in the wrong spot. But responding slower gives you time to really look at all of the things that you are responsible for, things that you have volunteered for, things that you want to do for yourself, and make that part of your schedule, right? If you have those different times of the day that are already part of your schedule, keep them. You don't move them for others. You keep them in your schedule. Of course, say no. Your no is a complete sentence. It does not have to be qualified, quantified, verified. It's just a no. Nobody needs a reason. Um, Also, people cannot be as readily available. And so, as women, a lot of times we're like, we should be available to our kids and our husbands and our spouses, our workplace as much as possible. But if we are always readily available, if we always show up, then when do we give other people chances to show up
Hmm.
and bear some responsibility or learn a new skill? And so, if we're going to actually truly be leaders, we should also be able to delegate as well as help people accomplish things themselves. So, you know, that whole adage of if I give a man a fish, he will eat for a day.
Hmm.
But if I teach him how to fish, he will eat for a lifetime. And as women, um, a good concept or thought that I usually work with women on when we're trying to dismantle these mindsets is I'm like, do you want your children to be dependent on you forever? Or do you want them to be able to invite you to their house when they're
Mm-hmm.
grown, that is clean, that they can cook, that they were responsible enough to have a job and pay for the food, and you go and enjoy yourself for the day? Or do you want them always at your home and you provide those things? And we all want our children to do well. So it's when they kind of see that perception, they're like, okay, so Johnny can wash his own clothes. Yes, he's 17. Let's show him. Let's
Mm-hmm.
teach him how to do it. He doesn't have to bring him home from college or whichever, or he's married with, maybe he's got a girlfriend and he still brings his clothes home. No, he can do it himself, and he should show his girlfriend that he knows how to do it himself.
Mm-hmm.
Prioritize self, which we talked about for sure. I tell people to put it on your schedule, block it off. It's not available for anybody else. That's your time, and nobody needs to know what you're doing at that time. It's yours. And if you have nothing on the schedule, that is something. Nothing can be something. It is so important just to have some times to reset and renew our spirits, our minds, and sometimes just clear our brains out. We've got so many things come in. Sometimes we just need to block everything out and just let the right things come in.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't have time to do that, a lot of different negative thoughts, intrusive thoughts can keep going. Um, I spoke about this one a little bit earlier about rationing our skills and strengths. And this is also, I like to say, is something to do with friends, family, and at work. So let's say I'm a great baker. Are you a good baker, Amy?
I'm a better cook than a baker.
Okay, Amy's a great cook. Let's use Amy as an example. All right, so if Amy's a great cook and her friends know that Amy's a great cook, they could say, well, we're gonna have 40 people over. Amy can just make the whole meal.
Mm.
No. Well, no. Amy has things to do, right? Amy can
Mm-hmm.
say, I know I'm a great cook. And I would love to cook for everybody, but one, I don't have enough time to do it all. But your great cooking skills, if you wanted them to be used and utilized, could be maybe just for you and your family
Mm.
at that moment in time. But nobody needs to know that. But you ration it out. You decide
Mm-hmm.
when you want to use these skills and strengths. Because what we can find out is Amy spends hours upon hours prepping. Amy shows up with all the food, and what happens? Nobody eats it. Or folks eat it, but they don't even appreciate it. They don't
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the amount of hours that you went through. The food is great, but they're also like, nobody wanted to give you, any money back for the food that I mean, money you spent to make the food. So different things like that. And so people get so worn out by sharing everything that they are, all the skills that they have. I see this in the workplace with the women I work with a lot. Oh my goodness, they are superstars. They're rock stars. We are amazing individuals. We are so resilient, right? We can
Mm.
do a lot of things. And I said, are those your roles and responsibilities on your job, your job list? And they're like, oh no. I said, well, why are you doing them?
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to know that you have these skills at this particular time, unless you're trying to move up the ladder, unless this is going to get you a promotion or an increase in pay. You need to work within your job description because those skills and strengths you might have might be better used at your church and
Mm.
better appreciated. They might be better used at your sorority house or something like that, or home. Maybe I think we talked a little bit earlier about like a reunion. Maybe I need to organize the family reunion. And I have great organizational skills, but that's not on my job description, and I don't get paid for that. So I'm not going to organize the staff retreat. Mm-mm. There's somebody that can do that there, right? And so we have to ration that out because if we decide I'm going to be the great organizer at all these different places, or Amy is going to be the great cook at NAMI and at home and with friends and at her church, then Amy is going to be tired because she's not a chef for a living, but it's a great skill she has, but she doesn't have to give it to everybody.
Mm.
And then lastly, we have to level set our expectations. So this goes back to the towels. Can people use the towels to dry off? Yes, even if they're not folded the proper way. My expectations don't have to be that high, but maybe the closet in the hallway that everybody sees, I would like those towels to look a certain way. Then fine, put the effort in, use your time, get that right. But everything else, I need to level set those expectations. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be to only your standards. Other people's standards are okay. And if they are all right with it and nobody's really overtly sick or struggling, then it can work out. I'm sorry if the eggs are a little bit burnt because your partner cooked and you didn't, they're edible. People can eat.
Hmm.
And sometimes the kids are just going to be like, I'm just going to cut this part off. Okay. And they still ate, right? Now, I know some kids these days are very finicky, so they may not eat, but little Johnny or little Joan will figure it out. They will not starve.
Hmm.
So I think that these are some things that really kind of help people combat really staying within that same stuck pattern of I have to do it all. I have to sacrifice. It's my obligation to show up in all these spaces the same way. Um, or I don't even find out what my real emotions are because I'm so busy doing everything.
Yeah. Do you use the same if you have a client who has maybe kind of been taught to take pride and identity
Mm.
in that kind of, I do everything mindset. Um, is the technique the same in trying to kind of break them out of some of those habits? Because you might not have somebody coming to you who's upset about their current state of mind, but they've been taught that this is the identity I'm supposed to embrace. I'm taking, you know, I'm taking pride in it. I am, flourishing, so to speak, in
Mm.
this, but it's also severely unhealthy. Like, is there additional technique that you have to use with some of those clients to get them to recognize some self-sabotage here? Or,
That's a really good question. Yes, we would have to use a whole bunch of different ones because if they don't even recognize it as a detriment, but it is a detriment, we're working on just the recognition of it all, right? The
hmm.
acceptance. But um, we look at what those societal expectations are, those cultural expectations are, the familial expectations are, and we try to dismantle and look at it that way. There is, like I said, there's some pride in it. There's some excitement in figuring some things out, and there's this beautiful concept about the community, right? Which is great. But the pride part that you talked about, I'm glad you brought it up. There's also like dopamine attached
Mm.
to being able to figure it out and nobody else figured it out, right?
Hmm.
Oh, it was me. I was the one that came up with this great idea and figured it all out. I spent the hours and sacrificed the time to do this, right? But if that is also on top of seven other things that you were responsible for, you ought to be very, very exhausted and tired. And there's going to be a cliff. There's going to be a drop
Hmm.
off of that dopamine. It's not always going to stay. Um, but it's almost like an addiction too, to have that type of pride and level and wanting it always to be me, figuring this out. And
Hmm.
so helping people understand that that pride is not always such a positive thing, that it doesn't allow others to show their strengths. It doesn't allow others to now develop and use their skills. Um, it keeps you on top, but not others there. So if you're really in a community mindset, then you're not helping do that. But this also pride mindset um, can keep you there by yourself
Mm.
because nobody else can maintain that level. They're not
Hmm.
supposed to. What we find in the African American community is our numbers are high for diabetes, they're high for high blood pressure, they're high for heart disease because we're doing a lot all the time
Mm.
and we're prideful about it. We can manage it. Oh, girl, I didn't need XYZ. I did it all with, just $25. But should you have?
Hmm.
Did you really need to? Because that meant you spent 7 hours on it. You had to drive across town. Like there's so many different other things that if it was a little bit easier and somebody else could have done it a little bit easier with more resources, then let's try to get that versus let me do it with half of the resources. But there's that dopamine hit. I did it. I did it. I feel great about it, right? And so we try to work on not needing that. So where else can we
Hmm.
get this dopamine hit from? Where else can we be proud of ourselves in? but not these concepts that are going to continue to be detrimental to us. Because, like you said, it's going to be great until it's not. It's going to be
Hmm.
great until it hits into our downfall. And so, just trying to dismantle that, we're looking at, like I said, familial and society expectations and really seeing, is this the best thing for you in all situations?
Hmm. So I want to take audience questions in a second, but I want to touch on one other thing, and that is kind of, we've talked about how, and I'll stop the share here. We've talked about how as women, the choices that we can make, the recovery steps that we can make, to just kind of make life a little easier for us to manage. But what about the people in our lives? So our partners, our children, our family members, our coworkers, our friends. What are some things that they could become aware of to avoid exacerbating this problem? Because we know that, a lot of women do it all because if they didn't, things wouldn't get done, or at least that's what they perceive is that, they're carrying everybody else around them. So what are some ways that people in a woman's life can kind of help her, come alongside her, help her shoulder the burdens?
Gotcha. I think definitely sharing the wealth of responsibilities. And
Hmm.
so us as women, I think it starts with us. Like once we recognize this and we see either ourselves in this syndrome or we see others with this syndrome, try to help them share the wealth. So finding out and figuring out whose roles and responsibilities are these, and is it all falling on one particular person? How do we share
Hmm.
that wealth, right? And so if we recognize that, I think it starts with us to really support ourselves that way. Another thing is that um, having this notion of, hmm, I would say more resources for people, that it's okay to parse out the resources for everybody.
Hmm.
It doesn't need to be. The only thing I keep thinking about is a song that says, try to make a dollar out of 15 cents, which never really works. It's
Hmm.
really hard. And sometimes we have to do that to, just make things stretch. But if we have resources, if other folks are cognizant and see other things that are happening, to kind of really see, let me push out and share these resources. Another thing is accept people's no's. So when they give you a no, accept it.
Mm.
Soon. Don't question, don't try to keep negotiating and manipulating and figuring out how to make them do what you need them to do. If they said no, honor it. Be okay with it. And tell them, I get it. You can say no. I've even said that to several friends before, like, hey, I have an ask of you, but you can say no. I'll go ahead and preface it.
Hmm.
Okay with you saying no because I know you have a lot on your plate. I usually get text messages just to say, I know you're busy. And I'm like, that's my cue to say no if I need to.
Hmm.
I appreciate that, right?
Yeah.
Um, also, I would say partners and family help your superwoman in your life find her me time,
Mm.
whatever that looks like. And so if you know that your partner really likes to go running, that would not be me, but it might be somebody else, right? But she really likes to go running, right? Get her a new pair of running shoes. Find a new path that she has been dying to go on and that now you know the path is there. Take her there. So she doesn't have to drive herself. Take her there, drop her off, tell her to come pick her up, or you're going to read a book and wait for her when she finishes. Like, make opportunities happen. If I'm working with people who are partnered and have children, I tell them, when can you grab the kiddos and take them wherever they need to go so that your partner can actually utilize some of this time to themselves.
Hmm.
And some people honestly just want to sit at home by themselves. Some folks want to go away and go to the spa. Some people may just want to go to the park and sit and read. But finding times that are really good for me time for that person and allowing them that space and time
Hmm.
with no interruptions. Don't call and say, oh my gosh, I can't find the bottle. You got to figure it out, sir. You got to figure it out. Give her an hour.
Hmm.
Give her an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are some things I think could help out. And I've seen it really change the game for some people where they're like, so now people around me value my time. I should value it too.
Mm,
People around me are putting more uh, uh, efforts in making sure that I'm okay, then I should also do the same
hmm.
for sure.
Yeah, it's often hard to treat ourselves as well as other people treat us.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I wonder why that is. We keep running and don't realize we need to treat ourselves very well.
Mm,
We just keep running. I know for me, I do a lot of different things. I'm pretty busy, but there are times that I just shut down and I go away and I shut things off. I have to. I try to do different general resets as much as possible. And in working in the helping profession, a lot of the medical professionals and teachers, they suffer with this syndrome a lot.
hmm.
And I just always try to employ them. You got to find that time just to pull away for yourself, whatever it looks like, and then reset so that you can show back up. Because in the helping profession, we like what we do. We really love helping people, but that doesn't mean I help everybody all the time and in all
Hmm.
settings. But
Yep.
I am one of those people that people find me in the grocery store and they just start chatting with me and telling me their life story. And then the next thing you know, I'm giving resources or I'm doing a
Mm,
quick counseling session.
hmm.
But I have to stop myself sometimes and I'll just say, that sounds really terrible, sir. And I'm going to pray that it gets better. And then I have to walk away because I'm not really his therapist, right? I'm not his
Yeah.
social worker. He's just at the grocery store with me.
Hmm.
But as a superwoman, sometimes I'm thinking I can help him too, but now I got to get home and do 10,000 other things. No, I can't. I have to say no.
We've got a couple of questions. Um, let's see. Oh, this might be tough. How do we dismantle other people's expectations of us?
Say no. Say no. I had a family member, she kind of like always kept us guessing about what she was able to do, what she liked to do, what she was really good at. And I thought that was pretty genius because as she kept us guessing, we didn't expect a lot from her, right?
Hmm.
So I think saying no can help with this, and holding that line. And then if you need to have crucial conversations with people, about dismantling some of these mindsets and letting and folks that you love and love you, they should want you to be well. And so if you share with them that I have this obligation in this mindset that I need to always figure things out and others don't need to help me, if you share that with somebody, they should respect it and say, you know what, you don't like that concept, so I can try to find ways to help you not burden yourself that way.
Hmm.
Those are folks that really love you and care about you. If the folks are like going to use that and exploit it to their end, then I don't know if they really care about you the way that they say they care about you. Um, and so I think when you look at um, what others are expecting of you, you've got to hold those boundaries and hold the lines. You really teach people how to treat you. You teach
Mm,
people how to expect you to show up. And it can be totally different, totally different. Um, you just don't have the same capacity. So one person, not one person, but one concept that we look at too is that when people enter this world of parenthood, and you think about the friends that you have before you become parents, everybody has this concept. They've seen it happen. If they've gotten over the 30-year range, they've seen this happen. Well, now they have kids, they're not accessible. Or now they have kids, they have other responsibilities, so they're not available for these late night talks or going around to do the local I don't know, some little, going to the local spots for whatever, they see that their expectations have changed of those new parents
hmm.
because their lifestyle has changed, right? And so people learn how to treat you by what you put out, but also what you put up as far as these boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. We had one viewer say that she's found that as a leader in healthcare and a brown woman of color, as she's shared vulnerably and openly about her mental health journey, She's trying to bust some of the stigma around that, but it's still difficult. She
Mm,
was recently part of a reduction in force, so a layoff. Uh, she says, I will still be me, but it's hard to know how to show up and keep on. How do you, I guess, encourage people to, keep feeding their souls when they've, just hit brick walls like this?
mhm. A lot of women, if they've been suffering through Superwoman syndrome, when it, I would say, changes, crumbles, like a reduction in workforce, or they no longer have to do the caregiving
Hmm.
for someone, whether it's an adult or child, they don't know what to do with themselves.
Hmm.
They hit a brick wall, right? They have no concept of who they are anymore. And so there's this work that people should do to kind of explore who they are because now their life has changed, but also the focus of their time has also been changed, right? And then if there's a job loss, now you may have to have a career shift too, a whole
Hmm.
professional shift. And so I think exploring all of that I get excited about it, but I understand it's hard when you have a crisis of identity. I do, I understand it. But I'm also I'm very palatable on changes in things. And so there's a journey that people have to go through to get to these different changes as they explore things, but they really have to know who they are. And presents a good opportunity when certain situations are taken away. So let's say the kid has gone off to college now and they're doing fine, they don't even call you, right? Then in your mind, you've got to really now figure out who am I now without having to take Johnny to lacrosse and go to the PTA meetings and da 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 da. You reinvent yourself and find and explore what you're really good at
Hmm.
outside of motherhood, possibly. You're still going to be a mother. You're going to still nurture when he needs you. You're more of a consultant.
Hmm.
But now you get to explore you. And it can be very frightening for a lot of people. I definitely understand that. And especially like we said, like not having to do a career change. And if that's the concept, then this work that we do now to dismantle this superwoman syndrome, this schema that tells us we have to do all these things, if we dismantle it before these things come up, then we're already prepared. We're already ready to take care of ourselves. We're already ready to do the next thing, volunteer, tap into our gifts of, let's say I'm really good at crafting, my gifts of crafting and helping other organizations with that. Maybe I can really sing, but I don't want to be like a musical artist, but I can teach others how to sing, or I
Hmm.
can start working in my church with a particular choir that hasn't been used in a few years, but now we want to start doing some more community outreach with songs. I can tap into that. And so there's all kinds of ways to really reinvent ourselves but not go into that same next path of life the same way. Not with our capes on.
Hmm.
Don't show up with your cape. Just show up with your pants or your dress and your little purse, whatever. But do not show up with that cape. That cape is gone. Let it go.
Hmm. Yeah, that viewer has a follow-up question about how much do we share openly about some of these struggles or just kind of our mental health in general, especially trying to come out of this mindset of needing to be impervious and, um, invulnerable to other people.
Gotcha. Well, I love the new catchphrase of it's okay not to be okay. I
Hmm.
actually used that for I had some different things happening and we were preparing for the election and I knew that we get this thing called transference from clients where if a client's upset, then we start to be upset or if they're crying and they're sad about something and now we're sad. So we have to always be mindful of that. And so I was starting to get election anxiety because everybody had election anxiety. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? So I had to take a moment, really figure out what my emotions were, realizing I'm suffering from some election anxiety myself. I need to tell people I'm not okay,
Hmm.
but I'm going to be able to do these few things. That's it. But I didn't have to go into a long soliloquy of what my emotions were or what I had to do to get better, da 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 da. I didn't need to do all that, but I needed to tell people it's okay not to be okay, and I'm not okay right now
Hmm.
because I'm suffering from a little bit of election anxiety because everybody's been talking about it, and I had to turn the TV off. I had to stop talking about it. I had to focus on other things, right? And so I think you share what needs to be shared, but you don't have to share everything.
Hmm.
Just sharing people with people. I'm not okay right now, but I'm working on it. I'm
Yeah.
not okay with this, but I'm great on this other concept type of thing.
And so I want to wrap up with one question. Thanksgiving is in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tomorrow, which is frightening to those of us who have responsibilities or travel plans or whatever.
I'm coming to your house, Amy.
Um, well, you can't do better than my sweet potato casserole. I'll just leave that at that. But I wanted to kind of just leave everybody with some practical ways that we can practice forming these boundaries around the holiday season, especially as, like we said at the beginning, women are kind of expected to do all of these extra things to create magic for their families on
Mhm.
top of all of their other responsibilities. How can we kind of draw boundaries around our holiday experience?
I like this question. Especially going into holidays. And holidays present a lot of different things for people. Some folks are struggling with grief and loss. Some folks are just struggling with finances. We're at the end of the year, so there may be more reductions. It's a lot of different things happening, right? But then, like you said, the magic of the season and family, and we want to have fun, and it usually falls on a lot of the women to figure this out. And so I say, let's share those responsibilities. Let's delegate. Let's see
Hmm.
how we can involve the children, our spouses, our partners, other family members to really share the load and not take on all of it ourselves. Just because it's been your responsibility does not mean it has to continue to be your responsibility. Um, I also think that I love to say this in my sessions, especially if I'm working with a woman who's partnered. I always say less and do less.
Mm. Hmm.
Because as women, we have a tendency to keep going sometimes, right? We keep talking, but sometimes it doesn't help. We're not getting where we need to go. You've already said what you needed to say, so say less, but also do less. Pull back.
Hmm.
And so, in that, you got to also prepare people that you're pulling back. You can't just stop everything cold turkey because, of course, they're thinking what same as usual. And if you stop everything cold turkey, then there could be a whole nother situation. But you can definitely let people know, I need to do less this year.
Hmm.
And I've decided this is what I can do, whatever that little bit is, and stick to it. Hold that boundary and hold the line. And so if that is Amy is only making her sweet potato casserole and making sure Renee gets a sliver, then that's it. That's it. Amy does not have to make the dressing and make sure she does the second turkey and all the other things.
Hmm.
Stay with it. People will still eat. Folks will have a good time, but try to go ahead and figure out what are the things I want to be involved in this year and stick with just that. Don't
Hmm.
go overboard. Don't do more. And the children will be fine if there are children involved. The family will be fine because people will step up. They absolutely will. But if we keep doing it and deciding that it should only be us, then we don't even give them the opportunity.
Yeah. It looks like we had one more question come in. So, um, this viewer is saying that she struggles with her family constantly asking, where she is, what is she doing? She's burnt out and she needs some ideas of kind of what to say to avoid some awkwardness this holiday.
Gotcha. Whew. Um, that could be a lot of different things. So, oh, I'm trying to see what they said maybe they're working. Is that what
Mm,
that is?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Um, I think still letting people know that you are not available can be a complete sentence.
Hmm.
And why you're not available or what you're obligated to doesn't have to be part of the scenario or the conversation. But letting them know you're not available. Family gatherings can cause a lot of anxiety and pressure for people too. And so if that isn't working for you, um, you may have to decide, let's say the family gathering starts at 3. but maybe you show up at 2:30 when there's less people and you leave by 3:30
Hmm.
so that you don't have to stay within the whole situation. That you don't have to answer multiple questions about what's going on in your life. I know that sometimes, like when people are suffering with grief and loss, or let's say they've recently had a different job change, or something's happened with their kiddos and they have to show up to family functions, something's different. We talk about limiting their exposure to the family to that time because it can continue to present awkward questions, awkward situations that people just aren't ready to deal with. And so limit your time there, leave early or go late when you know most people are already gone. If that's the kind of family gathering we have. Now, it does not help me at my house to come to my house late because everybody's still going to be there. They stay a long time. So at my house, come early because most people are going to come later and they're going to stay longer. So come
Yeah.
early to some family gatherings and leave fast to avoid that.
Well, we could probably talk about this for another hour, but in the
Absolutely.
effort of everybody's time, I'm going to say thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us and just having an insightful conversation about something that so many of us go through on a regular basis. And we want to thank everybody else for attending today's webinar and participating. I put our helpline information in the chat, so if you want to reach out for additional resources, please feel free to contact us. I'll also share whatever resources Dr. Renee has to share with us when I share the recording for everybody early next week. And we'll also provide a feedback survey, so please give us your feedback on this session if you enjoyed it. We'd love to know. We'll also just say keep an eye out for our next NAMI at Noon webinar. More details to come. We're still ironing out some of those final things, so just keep an eye out on our newsletter, social media, etc., for announcements about that. But again, Dr. Renee, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom with us, especially right before the holidays. We really appreciate having you today.
Thank you for having me, Amy. You guys have a wonderful holiday season.
All right, thank you all, and take care, and we'll see you next time.